Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of six, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Homestead Education Podcast. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Jaclyn Paul, and she wrote a book called Order from Chaos: The Everyday Grind of Staying Organized with Adult ADHD. And when I saw that title, I just knew that that was going to fit every conversation that we have on this podcast. So, welcome, Jaclyn.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my I started the book from a blog actually long ago, called the ADHD Homestead, which is I think how you did you find my book or the blog first? It was the
I think it was
Homestead.
the book, actually, but
Oh, what? So it's just so that's actually how it's been the past several years is people find the book and then don't realize, oh, you did a blog. So
well, you know what?
yeah.
I like the name the ADHD Homestead because it's where you plant your feet, you know?
hmm Yeah, and it was kind of a lighthearted title at the time, like dispatches from the ADHD homestead, and is really about caring for your whatever size and shape your quote unquote homestead may be, tending to it in the way that you want to, even if you have these struggles. But so that's how I got there was a long and winding road. And writing is something I've always done. I was the kid in elementary school. They sent me when I was in first grade to the third grade reading class and this. And interestingly, that gifted tag probably
Yeah, how
prevented
you
me
doing
from
now with
being,
that gifted and
oh my
talented class,
gosh,
you know?
there's so many posts you'll find online of, hey, here's where the gifted kids are now. And it is very
How's your
interesting because
anxiety?
yeah, well, at least I know about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's that constant pressure to live up to your potential, and when you do struggle, it's maybe a little bit baffling to those around you. And if I look at my elementary school report cards and notes home from teachers, in hindsight, it's so obvious what was going on. But I was obviously a quote unquote smart kid, and
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't thriving in the environment. And I didn't know how to be around the other kids. And at the time, I did not have siblings. And that I think played into it as well because I didn't have that social testing ground at home. And then in
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten was the first time I really had to be around a lot of other kids and figure out how to navigate that. So anyway, I by high school I kind of suspected the ADHD thing because I had a boyfriend in ninth grade who was diagnosed, and when he was telling me what it was like having ADHD, I was like, oh, well, okay. I mean, that just sounds like life, but it was the early days of the internet, so I was able to
You're
do
like,
a
I
little bit of
resemble that
yeah,
comment.
right. I was like, oh, that's not the way things are supposed to be. Um, I kind of, for many reasons, brushed it under the rug throughout in college and stuff. And then when I got out of college, had my own house, had an office job for the first time in my life, that's when it all sort of fell apart. And that's where the ADHD Homestead blog and then later the Order from Chaos book, that's where those were sort of born from, is that moment of everything falling to pieces because I didn't have school was very structured. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can figure out the formula to get an A or what you need to do day to day, show up to class, do this and that. Um, but once you're out of college, there's not a formula to get the easy A.
There's not.
And I had coasted by being a really good underachiever in that I took the advanced classes in high school, but only in classes that I like actually felt like doing more work in.
Mm-hmm.
And then later compared that to my sister took the guidance counselor's advice and just stacked up all the AP classes and really struggled because some of those were subjects that she didn't really care for.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
That
it's
was like I took honors
interesting.
trig, but I was not interested in
Oh my
honors English.
goodness.
Like,
That was yeah. And for me, it was, yeah, trig geometry were very weak subjects for me and remain so, and my family kind of laughs at me for it. But um, yeah, so but that making your own schedule and your own accountability in adulthood is very hard. And then eventually I went through a winding path academically and professionally, and eventually I ended up back with writing when I published Order from Chaos, and then I published a novel a couple years ago as well. So now I'm back where I began at age 4 with, which, is funny because as I was doing my winding path in college, my mom was like, why don't you just do something you're good at? And, well, don't overthink it. And then she suggested art, which she was like halfway there because I should have done something I was good at. But I was like, oh, I should have done writing, English, literature, something like that. But
what did you
um,
end up majoring
yeah,
in?
visual arts,
Oh,
which
okay.
is sounds close, but it's I am returning to the trig and geometry were my worst subjects. I'm not a visual person at all. So
Mm.
I knew how to work hard and try to meet expectations, but I was very burned out by the end because of how much harder I feel like I had to work than the
I feel like
people
I can
who
definitely
were.
understand that because like when I was in high school and college, I have a almost photographic memory.
Oh wow.
So I didn't have to really do homework or
Mm-hmm.
study. I had even in college, like as a science major, I had ways that I could kind of like skirt around the amount of work that everybody else had to do
Yep.
and still be able to ace my classes. And yeah, then I get into the real world where I kind of have to work like that 8 hour day.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and I did do like I went to I got a job for several years and then went to college kind of later in my 20s and then but I still kind of shifting from working in a smaller office in a small town where you could just kind of get away with a little more, I guess,
Yeah.
to suddenly working out in the real world and having to like commit to that 8 hour a day and follow all the rules and be on time and
Yeah.
oh, did I
When
mention being
manage
on
the you
time?
go to a meeting and then everybody takes their action items away and then you have to integrate those into your workflow, and it was yeah, that was a big yikes for me because I still don't know how to study. I never learned
Oh
how to
wow.
study because I was a linguistic thinker, and so I was very good at stories, and I could ace a multiple choice test very easily. And I didn't necessarily retain the information, but I was very good at writing about it and being tested on it within a short time
Short
span.
period. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, but it's interesting because I can see how I had an advantage because of the way our education system is set up, but I'm not the best learner I know, even if I was like among the best students in terms of being able to like do what was asked academically.
Well, that's
But
probably a big
yeah,
reason why we homeschool.
yeah, you can tailor it to.
Because our kids were struggling with that. I had one that was very charismatic and was like acing all his classes and had no clue what they even talked about. Or then I had like my daughter who's wants to do everything right and perfect, but her ADHD made it where she couldn't and she was a constant, like, just emotional wreck.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah. And school is, if you have sensory, because my kid has sensory sensitivities, and school is very challenging that way because even I've learned when they break up for group work in class and it's just small groups and like what you and I might consider a normal level of like background chatter is just so overwhelming for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then so he's kind of losing his mind. And I'm like, well, okay, but this is a situation that you have to learn how to be in. And but it's
I
like, yeah. And then if the work isn't challenging enough and they get bored, it's like they can't corral themselves. And all right, some of these challenges are good to work on generally, but some of them it's like, this is Is learning how to deal with this really a long
Right?
term?
I have a 16-year-old son who's autistic and ADHD, and he likes to go to my conferences with me. Well, there's 10,000 people in a room all talking. And he's like, it's really overwhelming. I just can't handle it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is kind of one of those points where you're 16 and you wanted to come with me. Suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised in a very different environment than I feel like we here. And there was one's intolerance for discomfort was not something that entered the conversation, shall we say. Yeah, it
Hmm.
was just expected that you deal with it and certainly don't make it everybody else's problem. And that has been an interesting negotiation because I was like, all right, I know more. I know how to be understanding.
Hey guys, I know that we are always looking for ways to connect our homeschool kids with our communities and find things to do when we're out and about. Plus, it is so important to be connecting with like-minded families and those that have the same interests that we do. That's why I'm so excited to announce the new app that just launched. Basecamp Ed is a community-based platform for parents to find like-minded families and dedicated teachers in their area. Whether you homeschool your children, are curious about it, or simply want to build a community of extracurricular activities, Basecamp Ed has you covered. Connect with local parents to create co ops, form groups for your children's interests, and use the calendar to schedule events with ease. Teachers and coaches can also create profiles to list their credentials for parents to find a way to supplement subjects and activities. Homeschooling was never meant to be done alone. It takes a village. Build it with Basecamp Ed. Take advantage of this free resource and download it today. You can also follow them on Instagram and Facebook at Basecamp Ed app for the latest updates. And you can get the link to that in the show notes for this episode.
But also, there are times when you need to figure out how to deal with it
Yeah,
yourself.
you
Like
kind
if
of have
that's
to be
putting
able
the
to
loop
function in
earplugs
life.
in or what. But
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you're going to walk into a restaurant and there are people talking at other tables. And, you know, you could never go out to eat. But what if
Hmm.
somebody's having a thing that you really want to go to? So just,
Yeah, that's
you
kind of
know,
where we're at is you can express that that bothers you, but there's certain things in life that require you to be in uncomfortable situations.
yeah.
It's actually,
Yeah,
have you
one
read the
just discerning when that's bad and when it's like a character building
right? Have you read
exercise.
the book The Comfort Crisis?
No, but it sounds like one that I would want to read.
It's very good. He's a reporter, but he just kind of talks about kind of how as a nation, like we are allowed to be too comfortable, everything is too
Hmm.
convenient, and how you kind of have to push through that for your own betterment.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's really
it's
good. And he talks about being on a caribou hunt in like way North Alaska where they're living in like tents and negative 30-degree weather and but it's like a trip of a lifetime, So
yeah.
it's really
Yeah, that's an
interesting.
interesting one because and especially for, kids ADHD, autism, there's a lot of stuff that is uncomfortable and there is an ethos now, I think, among parents of our generation that well, don't teach kids to override their discomfort because your instincts about what you need are important and we were taught to suppress those and it's like, well, that's true, but there's
But
there's
yeah.
a discernment of when do I need to push through this to give myself the rote knowledge that I can do it? And when am I uncomfortable because something bad is happening? And to me, that's two very different things. And
Hmm.
even we climb and climbing, I'm like, all right, so there are times when you're feeling fearful because there's a situation that's not good and you should listen to that. And there are times where you're like, oh, this is scary and I might fall, but it's not it's not dangerous to fall at
Hmm.
that point. The rope's going to catch you or whatever. But that's been an interesting mental training ground for me on, oh, there are times when that fear is telling you don't go any further. And then
Hmm.
there are times when the fear is just innate and something that you have to teach yourself that, oh, it's okay to do something even though it's uncomfortable. And trying to teach that with varying.
We see that a lot with the kids on the farm because we live in North Idaho. It gets very cold here. and there's farm work that needs to be done no matter what the temperature is. And our son, he'll like our one son that's the most sensitive to that. Like he's the almost 17-year-old now, and he's out there like, my hands are cold, my hands are cold. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
It
Like,
just, yeah, well, and there's a
you have
difference between
gloves.
being uncomfortable cold and, well, and here, so in Maryland, it's usually not dangerously cold. And
Mhm.
so I know some friends locally who will really enforce, between these temperature ranges, you need to wear a jacket. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. If you're just going outside to play and it gets too cold, big deal. But then if
We've
we're,
actually lived in places
yeah.
where they didn't stop recess until it was -15. So,
Wow. You see,
yeah,
they stop outdoor recess, I think, too soon here. That I'm like, oh, come on. If it's 30 degrees, the kids can definitely go outside. Like, put them out. Because the school building is right there. If somebody gets too
right.
cold, like they
Well,
can just go in.
I feel
But,
like, with the
and
kids on
then,
the farm, that at the end of the task, you're going inside where it's warm. Like this is
yeah, if the
not,
house is right there, it's
mhm,
fine. Now, if we're skiing in northern Vermont, I'm like very strict because
oh
I'm like,
yeah, 'cause
all
you're out in
right.
there all day.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is actually, if you don't do it right, it's dangerous. And so you need to put the right gear on, or else you could, have a real problem. But yeah, it's if
Or if
for
you like
me, I'm
go off the
like,
wrong way and get stranded or lost or something or
oh
hurt
yeah,
yourself and
like
you're laying in the snow for hours.
the margin of error is just much smaller. But if for me, I'm like, well, if inside is right there and you can go back in after you're done the thing out in the cold, then, you know, then that's just a time to, yes, it's cold, but
I actually wrote a
I
book
love
called
the colds.
Raising Self-Sufficient Kids. And I actually do cover a big section on that where like sometimes they're just going to be uncomfortable and that's okay.
Yeah. When sometimes they need to make the mistake too,
Hmm.
that if you say, well, you got to put a certain kind of shoe on your foot to do this job. I mean, yeah, not if you're gonna like lose a toe if something goes
Right.
wrong, but and
Well, like my
yeah,
my 5-year-old who hates blisters but refuses to put on socks. I'm like, he'll figure it out.
well, that's the cost of doing business. Yeah.
Or the other day when I have videos of him playing in the snow in muck boots, swim trunks, and a tank top. Like,
Which, yeah. No, I
I'm
used
like,
to carry a jacket with me when he was really small because I'm like, well, I want people to know that I tried to provide a jacket. If I'm out somewhere, in public where people are like, doesn't that child have a jacket? And I'm like, yeah, you just didn't feel like wearing it. And,
right.
it's some kids, everything is a battle and you really have to choose which ones are, and then let the rest go, let them learn. But it is, yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
I'm a
hard
big
to
one
let
on
them make the
that.
mistakes sometimes.
'Cause if you don't want to wear a jacket, don't wear a jacket.
Yeah.
Like,
But then don't complain
yeah,
if you're so
that too.
yeah.
Um, I love this chat about the kids because I mean, especially like I said, in homesteading, we do a lot of things that are uncomfortable. And even as homeschoolers, because I don't make them go to school and be in those uncomfortable situations, but I also am like, you're going to be learning in a whole different way. And we're going to like push those limits without it having to be that really uncomfortable, like in front of your peers.
Yeah.
But so what led you to write this book? Because I love Order to Chaos. We actually do a thing in the house. We call it Chaos to Control.
Mm,
And we like put a board up and we list all the chaotic things that are happening in the house that are like bothering people or making life not run right. Because, things get out of order.
yeah.
And then everybody sits down and they take ownership over one thing that they're going to put into control. And then we write it up and put it on the fridge and we follow that until it gets out of control again.
I love that actually. Yeah. When I like that you said it's making things not feel good because at the time that I wrote the book, not as many people were talking about this sort of mundane experience of a quote unquote regular adult with ADHD. We had a lot of 20 something influencers and then
It always
people talk
feels a
about
little
kids.
like, I'm like, yeah, I have adult ADHD. They're like, sure.
Yeah, well, I got
Okay,
but you're
well,
so smart. And I'm like, well, that's not mutually exclusive, actually. But
In
yeah,
fact,
so I wrote
sometimes it's
the,
actually
yeah,
worse. I'm so smart in like a million different directions.
well, exactly. And like having an aptitude for a lot of things, then you really have to be able to narrow the focus in a way that I've not always succeeded in doing. But yeah, so I just wanted to write for people who wanted to bring things in like a little bit more under control, and I mean, there still is a lot of that affirmational messaging about like, yeah, let it go. Like things can be a little messy, or you don't have to conform to all of society's expectations, which is helpful in some ways, but I'm like, actually, my mental state goes the way of the clutter in the house, and I didn't want to be living in a big mess. And so my message was, it's okay if you want to be living differently than you are, even if someone's telling you, oh, you should just accept who and how you are. And you, yes, but gain the self-knowledge and
There's
bring things
accepting who
into a
you
level
are
of
and
order
taking
that feels
ownership
good.
in like advocating for yourself.
Yeah, because I wasn't happy. And I also, because it's the kind of thing I do, I mean, I had like months of unopened mail piled up. And meanwhile, I had decided I wanted to replace the plaster in one of our bedrooms with drywall. And so I like knocked down all the walls, got rid of the plaster. And my husband was like, well, but what's your plan for having walls in the room? I was like, I mean, I don't know, just get drywall and put it up. And he was like, I'm not good
I'm
at
not
thinking
laughing
through
at you. I
those
am
kinds
laughing
of
with you
steps.
right now.
Like, right. I was like, it'll just happen. We'll do it. Um, but I tend to think of a job like that as one thing, like, oh yeah, hang the drywall. It's actually a big multi-step project. And
Yeah.
it's something that's a little bit more fussy and detail oriented than I'm really suited for. So that room sat stripped down to the studs for over a year. And at some point I was like, well, I'm paying a mortgage on a 3-bedroom house and I made it into a 2-bedroom because I just have this construction zone that I and stuff like that. I just didn't feel good about. I would get back then we had to, submit for reimbursements for work expenses and then they would cut you a check. And I would just forget to deposit those checks until they
Oh no.
expired. And then I would have to ask my employer for a new check, or depending on the amount, I might have been like a little too embarrassed and decided like I'll just let that one go and I'll ask for it. So it's all these things. It was like really cutting into my like quality of life, and
Hmm.
it's like all these little ways that it was costing me literally and figuratively. And so it's yeah, the book is a little bit of a story about how I brought all that chaos under control, and then um hopefully, helpful advice for others to chart their own path.
I love that because, yeah, like I said, we definitely acknowledged, like I said, as a family, we are all very chaotic, but we're also thriving too. And it's a lot of that taking the chaos for a long time I couldn't figure that piece out. And that's when I figured out the chaos to control method, especially when our kids started getting older, where they could take that ownership in it. And, like one of them, my daughter was like, I just hate that the kitchen floor is always messy.
Mm,
Farmers,
yeah.
And she's like, and it just like I'll go in and I'll do the kitchen, my kitchen chore. She's 16. I have twins. So like, she goes in and it's like, I'll do my kitchen chore. And then it's just dirty again. And so then her twin brother was like, well, I'm the one who comes in with the milking equipment in the morning and makes the mess. So part of my routine will be to sweep the floor.
Mm,
And he
yeah.
took ownership in that. So then he felt good about doing that for everybody else.
Yeah. When that's someone coming with a problem and then someone
Mhm.
else proposing a solution, which is, I try to do that objectivity, because then you're not accusing anybody and you're not judging. You're just saying, I'm that way about the floor too. That's why I got a Roomba, because I like to be barefoot in the house, but then I hate the feeling of walking on, look, I'll be barefoot outside too. So I don't mind walking on dirt. But then for some reason in the house, I want it to feel nice and clean under my feet. But I said, all right, don't get run the Roomba every day, and then it's nobody has to vacuum, but
We had a Roomba
um
in our old house and it worked really well, but it was only like a 1,600 square foot home that was 2 story,
mm,
so it only did the downstairs.
yeah, that's what ours does.
And now we're in a 4,000 square foot home and are full-blown farmers now, and we tried to keep our Roomba alive and
It was just
it
too
was
much.
just like not happening. Like we need
Yeah.
like a tractor size Roomba.
We have family who live in like a big old farmhouse, and I noticed when we were over there, I was like, oh, they have like two Roombas for their downstairs. I wonder if each of them has like its own. Ours is a very primitive one that just kind of bumps into stuff and figures it out. But there are ones that you can give them at
Like you
like a
can put up like
territory.
the inventory or the invisible fences or something.
Yeah.
That
I
might
was
be
like, oh, I
something to
wonder
look
if they
into.
have them, so one is like this part of the house, and then this is the because yeah, ours is getting a little bit old and worn out just from our downstairs and our row house, but it's
I
yeah, but it's the like lack of judgment too, is that, and like for yourself and for others, that oh, this is a problem. Is it fair for me to ask others to accommodate this problem? And also, just how can we fix it and not, I like why are you making the floor so dirty here? And then it becomes like a interpersonal tension, or
mhm.
even just alone, like, oh, why,
It builds
and
the animosity and stuff. So I figure if we just
yeah.
put it all out there and we all list what we are struggling with, and then I let them all take something that they want. And then if there's a few others, then I might be like, okay, we're gonna assign this one and that seems to really work. But yeah, that you were talking about the project thing. And I was laughing on that one because we all have those in the
Hmm.
house. But our one son, thank goodness he moved out. But he was the kid that would like decide he was going fishing at the pond and pull out, and this is like, in his teen years and stuff, he'd pull out all of our fishing gear because he needed some certain lure that I'm not even sure we ever owned. And so then in the garage, all the fishing gear is like dumped out. But then while he was doing that, he realized he needed like a pocket knife and then goes and finds his pocket knife, and then his pocket knife is too dull, so then he gets out the equipment to sharpen his pocket knife, but while he's pulling out the tools for that he remembers that he wanted to take apart an engine, so then he takes all the tools out and like completely dismantles our lawnmower in the driveway. Then I don't know, it heads on to something else, and like he moved out over 2 years ago and we are still finding like taken apart equipment and his clothes all over the property. Like, why did you have so many clothes all over the property? And he's like, that's how I roll.
Yeah. No, that's like the whole, I've thought about writing out stories of one simple task just as a demonstration like that, because it cascades. And even this morning when I went to get this dirt, I was like, well, I need some plastic tubs. I said, oh, well, all of our duffel bags and backpacks are in this big plastic tub in the closet. And so I pull out the tub and I put all the bags on the bed. And I thought, yeah, well, you know what? I really can't put these away until I sort through them, because there's probably some that I need to get rid of. But then I know, well, there's one that I want to sell, but then I need to get a different, more suitable bag to replace, because it's like a backpacking backpack and I want a climbing backpack. And then I was like, oh no, this is starting to get to be a big project. When really, I got this dirt and now I have these tubs of dirt. I need to put the dirt where it
So that you
belongs,
have
and
your
then
tub back to be able to put.
so that I have the tub back. But I mean, that's like a small scale example, but there are so many things that it leapfrogs like that. And then
Mhm,
every place you go to get a supply for what you're doing, there's another like sidebar project that
mhm.
comes on with it. So like, what's all this stuff out? I said, well, you wouldn't believe where this started, but
I think there's
and
actually a children's story that goes like that. Like, I don't know.
I feel like there's got to be a good like little critter or something. Little critter is one of
Yeah.
my, favorite I don't know if the author describes little critters specifically as having ADHD, but there are so many that I was like, oh, little critter. Like like there's one whole book called I Just Forgot. Like
I'll have to-
I was taking a bath, but I just forgot to turn the tub off. And like I was just
Yeah, that sounds
yeah.
very familiar.
Yeah. But yeah, it's and the seeing things as projects and the actually the definition of a project that I talk about in my book that I got from David Allen's Getting Things Done was one of the most significant discoveries of my ADHD life because I was, oh, I'm writing things on my to-do list that are actually multi-step things. And that's why those things aren't getting done because I need to put it in a list of projects where I can then be like, all right, now what's the next step?
I've
What do I do
discovered
next?
Asana.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
It's a digital planner, project planner type thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not a digital planner person. Like I need to write it down and see it visually, probably in different colors. But I put it all in there. Like if I have a project and then I break it down by subtasks and I add any links or documents or whatever I need into it. But then every morning I sit down with my paper planner and write down everything that's due that day. Or,
Yeah.
and then I can look at the next day too and see like, is there something I need to do to be ready for the next day?
Yeah. No, I do that in the morning too. I look at my calendar and I write down only things that have to be done today. Because then
Hmm.
and it's another David Allen thing is it because if I start writing things on my today to-do list, my paper one that don't have to be done today, it's like your subconscious knows that. And it'll be like, we don't really have to listen to this list now, do we? Because it has things that don't
Right.
really have to be done today. And so I really am fussy about, only writing things on the today list that
I
it
do it
won't matter
where
after today.
I do have like when I write it, it's on just like a note page. I found like a note page is a better planner for me because I can design it however I want for that
Hmm.
day. But I will put like the next couple of days on it, but then I'll like if I there's something that isn't for like Monday, I put it on the Tuesday list just so I'm like planning for it because otherwise knowing that it's there and I didn't document it somewhere, and
Yes.
I'm worried I'm going to forget that I didn't document it.
Yeah, documenting it is like how I reduce the anxiety
Yeah.
around when is the other shoe gonna drop? Did I drop the ball on something? Like, am I forgetting something? Or that, oh, I need to do this right now, even though it's not a priority because I'll forget it if I don't. But I do, I don't know if I guess it's bullet journal. My system kind of started in bullet journal land, and I have like a weekly spread that is kind of a planner I make as I go. And yeah, so I have each day, but then I have at the beginning of the week, if there are things that have to happen that week, I have a like
Hmm.
this week box at the top that I'll write down. It doesn't matter
Okay.
when,
Yeah.
but it's got to happen. It's got to happen this week. And
I have like I call it like projects and it's like running down the side of my page.
yeah.
And like I even do it where, we're always screenshotting stuff and putting it in our notes on our phone and that type of thing.
Hmm.
So I have an Asana task that pops up every Monday to check phone notes
Oh, yeah, it's a good one. Because like the notes app, the voice memos app, the photos
Mhm.
app are three places that things go. And I
Today.
don't always get the stuff back. Yeah, it's just yeah, that
So
my
and
notes app
sometimes
is the biggest junk drawer. And
and sometimes on Mondays I don't get around to it because it's not like the most pressing task. But I find
yeah.
if I at least do it a couple times a month, it keeps it under control.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have things like every Monday I have a checklist that I go through to capture all the outstanding nonsense and it's yeah, even if I shortchange it one Monday because things are tight, it, if I get to it, yeah, it really it's then the next week I'll be like, all right, now I really got to be serious and go through all this. But yeah, that regular reviewing of the stuff because I don't hold it in my head at all. And
Yeah.
so it really has to, I need the checklist of
I either
here
don't
are the
hold it
things
in
I
my
need to
head
check.
or it's so held in my head that I'm almost like I can't, like I'm obsessing about it
It's
kind of.
pushing out the other stuff. Yeah.
Hmm. So, what are some tips that you have, like if somebody like comes to you and they're like, I'm gonna like lose it, like what's your like elevator speech on getting them lined out?
So if at the very beginning of the process, I am all about like sort of containing and then also reducing the incoming flow. So, make make some discrete containers for like, all right, I've been writing sticky notes and then they just end up all over the place. Well, there needs to be a bin or something where you put those sticky notes into. So I know that all the stuff that I wrote down and I need to look at later is in one place and I can get it there. Um, but then, even if we have the best process in the world for dealing with those sticky notes or managing our projects or doing our email or whatever, I at some point I think you might determine that the incoming flow is more than you can accommodate. So it's like, all right, I'm subscribed to all these email newsletters. I can't read them all. Some of them I have to unsubscribe to, or if I'm doing, stuff in my community where I have like 3 leadership roles, is that really reasonable? No. And so, I just had to do that recently. I was like, I need to step back a little bit.
I often don't have the
And
concept that I don't have time to do everything that my brain thinks I can.
right. And it's like everything that sounds good or, feel like you should do, and then jump on board. And it's too much. And I think that the self-knowledge piece was very important to me, like especially early on, is figuring out how do you naturally work well? How do you think? What are you good at? And lean into that as opposed to fighting against the parts of yourself that are creating the struggle. And so for us, our family is a mix of different sort of thinking styles. But for a visual person, if I'm going out of my mind with clutter in the house, just yelling at everyone to clean up their stuff and put it away isn't going to work. And especially if they're very visual, because some people, especially with ADHD, your working memory is not holding all this stuff in your head. When you put something away so that you can't see it, it's like gone. And so, in addition to being a tedious chore, sometimes putting away your things feels uncomfortable because, well, if I can't see it, I'm not gonna remember it exists. And so, for some things, we keep in baskets, and that's my compromise, is like having a basket. If you can't put it away where you can't see it, at least put it in the bin and not just spread out all over the place, and just kind of containing that stuff and working with your thought process. And then, I had a boss who like went to those open file racks where the hanging files hang on them, but
Mm,
because she like wouldn't use a file cabinet. And so, it's you might read Getting Things Done and it's like you need a file cabinet where you put all your stuff and it's alphabetized. But if you're the type of person who won't use it because you can't see the folders,
right.
then those open racks and stuff like that. So
I
figuring out
can,
where the actual barriers are. And
yeah, I do. I have different colored, like just folders that
mm-hmm,
just sit on my desk, and they're for different like businesses that I have or different projects I'm working on. And then that way, when I'm like, okay, this is my block time to work on this writing project or something, I just pull that color and everything that I've been working on is crammed in there.
it's yeah. And so it's
There's
like
no
a
rhyme or reason
pile.
there, but
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And going back to like chaos situations that are bugging people. And one example I give in my book is like our bedroom, there were just clothes all over every surface. And finally, I asked my husband, like, what the heck's going on here? Because we can't just leave our clothes all over. Put them in the hamper. And he was like, well, no, because they're ones, it's like a
semi-clean.
hoodie. Yeah, it's like a hoodie I wore once. And like on laundry day, I might wash it, but like I might wear it again because it's not like dirty, dirty. I was like, oh, okay. And so we each now have a basket where those clothes go. And then laundry day, I'll like go through the baskets and put stuff in the laundry that needs to go in there.
We have a
But
couple of coat
yeah,
racks that we do that with. Like this is like,
yeah,
like this flannel that I'm wearing. Like I'll wear it right now and go hang it back on the coat rack and not wear it again until I go outside later.
yeah. But it's like finding a place. And so it's not like, oh, why are you such a slob that you can't pick up your clothes? It's like, oh, well, but why is it happening? And then we don't have clothes all over the place in the bedroom now because they either go in where the clean clothes go or in the laundry basket or in the basket of stuff that like I might wear again. And but it's that like objectivity and kind of curiosity about, getting to know yourself and just asking why something is happening as opposed to passing, because I think that we're taught to pass judgment and be like, wow, like you walk into my bedroom and you just know like I'm such a slob. I know my life together. And I catch my kid doing that, talking like that kind of self-talk that's like, oh well, I'm just stupid or bad at this. And like, no, and actually spending your energy being upset about being quote unquote stupid or bad at something is preventing you from coming up with a solution that's gonna actually make it better. So, um,
Yeah, that's a bummer.
it's
I've
yeah.
heard my kids do that. And I do it to myself sometimes. I'm like, why do I let my bedroom get like this? Like, I have a clean house, I have a clean office, I run three businesses, like I homeschool my kids and we're so organized with all of that. And I'm like, oh, that's why my bedroom's a disaster.
Yeah. No, that's any space, and even like the office before, I guess pre-pandemic, it was my office. And it was like the one room I didn't clean because it was
Hmm.
like my room. And so I made sure the rest of the house was fine. And then I was like, ugh, but like to summon the energy to clean like my space is, no, I'd rather be doing literally anything else. And
Right.
yeah, but yeah, it's not like, oh, well, and sometimes I am choosing to do something fun instead of doing it. But yeah, a lot of times I mean, for us, I feel like also a lot of stuff takes more time and more energy than it would for someone without ADHD. So that's another
And
thing. It's like, it's why you don't get to some things is because it's like sometimes I'm working twice as hard to get the same, you know, to get to the same place. And I just don't have it left in me at the end of the day to do that extra stuff.
right, do you find that like a lot of other people, even like medical professionals, don't realize that ADHD goes beyond just being hyperactive?
Yeah, that's very frustrating. And that's something I've tried to write about on the blog in the past too, is that there's so much more to it. And even, I mean, I hesitate to even bring it up, but the New York Times had an article about ADHD recently that
Hmm.
um, I was like, oh, do I want to read this? Because I've disagreed with their coverage of ADHD in the past. And do I really want to be mad about the news again right now? But
I'm not
um,
allowed to watch the news.
no, it's like, stressed down. But and Russell Barkley did a YouTube series, like kind of picking apart the article. But I finally did read it and I was like, ugh. So we're talking about ADHD in the context of like work and school. And that's not that's not it. There's so much more. And there's like the emotional regulation piece, which
Mhm.
I think is so important, and that people with ADHD are really, really significantly higher risk for self-harming behaviors, for eating disorders, for the stuff that's like
Sleep
very
issues,
serious.
body
Yeah.
pain, like all sorts of.
Yeah. When especially like women, I think tend to internalize more. And so there are a lot of like chronic health concerns that come up because of like internalizing all this for so long. And so, yeah, when I hear people reduce it to just work and school and the funny parts, it's like
Mhm.
hyperactive or impulsive. I'm like, yeah, but there's a dark side to that impulsivity and the big feelings and all that. Like if your big feelings are happy and entertaining, okay, but they aren't always. And it's like something that I feel like is important to think about, even if you have kids, teaching them to self-regulate and to deal with that stuff and
One
know
thing
that
I
there's risk.
One thing I see a lot is that people, they hear impulse control and they just thinking of like a little wild kid like jumping off a rock or something.
Yeah.
And I was actually really frustrated. Our 17-year-old son, we recently decided, like, you know what? I think he needs some ADHD meds. Like, he's kind of really struggling in this, like, next part of, like, transitioning into adulthood.
Hmm.
And we always, like, we advocate for the kids, like, if you want medications, you can be on them. Take them for the time that feels comfortable to you. Like my daughter, she was on him during junior high because she wanted to learn like coping mechanisms. She was off him for a couple of years and she's like, Mom, I'm really struggling again. Okay, let's
Yeah.
go get back on something. I started taking meds. Oh my gosh, I slept for the first time in like 3 years. And so anyways, we took our son in and we're like, hey, we think he needs to be on something. They ended up sending us to a psychiatrist because of his age and his autism as well. And I said, yeah, he goes up to the barn and he just won't do his chores and comes back. And she's like, well, we can try a medication, but medication won't make him want to do his chores. And I was like, but the medication will make it where he doesn't have the impulse control issues of, hey, I'd rather be in the house eating breakfast than feeding pigs. So,
Yeah, you don't want to, but you can, even though you don't want to.
yeah, there's like like the teenagers, they'll really take that risk of like, I would rather have instant gratification right now and face the chance of consequences, but there's always a chance they don't find out and then there's no
Yeah.
consequence. And I'm like, that's actually a huge part of ADHD, especially in teenage boys.
Oh yeah.
And
And yeah.
she just looked at me like, well, you can try it, but I don't think it's going to do any good. Well, he's on meds now, and not only is he doing all of his chores, he's coming back down and he's like, hey, Mom, you've been kind of busy. Do you think I can go ahead and start your seed starts? And he just did a
Oh,
whole round in our incubator and hatched out like an 85% hatch rate on his first time running the incubator. And like, I mean, he's just taking on these extra responsibilities because he sees the long-term benefit rather than his own personal instant gratification.
yeah. When it's that the effect that has on their their like self-worth feelings is so huge. And it's like, I hate to see that. And or well, if it's not, I had a friend who's a teacher tell me, oh yeah, we can't refer kids for an ADHD evaluation unless it's affecting their grades. And I was like, okay, but I
I
mean,
was
when
a
I
straight A
was,
student and I'm like a model ADHDer.
yeah, so well, okay, in elementary school, I was getting fine grades, but I socially struggled so much in ways that I probably would not have with,
Mhm.
even knowing what ADHD was. But and
What do they call it? Like where like the internalization of everything, you see like all criticism as just like I guess a personal attack or something.
mhm,
That was really hard for me in school and even as in adulthood, even sometimes with my stuff now.
yeah, we get that rejection sensitivity and the just I also the accumulation of negative feedback and the experience, for me of like I did wear out my welcome with people. And so I still to this day kind of am a little bit vigilant about like, oh, are these people tired of me? Did I do like, was I too much? And I know that that's not healthy or helpful. And so, I kind of go, just tell yourself, what if your friends want to hang out with you and that's why they invited you? But it's just allowing that to accumulate throughout an entire childhood. It has a tremendous effect. And
It
just, I
doesn't,
mean,
that rejection sensitivity is why most girls do well in school with ADHD because they're afraid of getting a bad grade or getting
yeah.
something wrong or not having their teacher or their parent happy with them.
Yeah, because I mean, I would have been punished if I got bad grades. So I
Where I think the
didn't.
little boys are more, they go for that impulse control of well, maybe I won't, I'm just not going to do it and see what happens because I'd rather do whatever it is I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you looking for new ways to advertise your business? I would like to invite you to advertise your business on the Homestead Education Podcast. Did you know that 60% of listeners will make a purchase after hearing an ad on a podcast? Why is this? Because personal connections and credibility from someone they truly trust will give you the best conversions. My podcast has been on the air for over 3 years now, and with an average of 5,000 downloads per episode and tons of long term listeners, you're bound to have somebody who will find that credibility in me. All ad spots will be promoted on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my weekly newsletter. I have podcast sponsorship spots available that are affordable for all business sizes. And all advertising revenue will be used towards my educational outreach in the form of travel costs, curriculum development, supplies, and the administration of such activities. Go to my show notes now or visit thehomesteadeducation.com/podcast-sponsorship. I hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. My son first started on the ADHD meds when he was in kindergarten, and I asked him after he had tried them for, a day or two. I said, what do you notice? And he goes, "Oh, I'm like a whole different person." I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "No, I just make all different choices." And what he had been doing was just this like really belligerent, like not, yeah, they're like just not, you send them to do the chores and they don't do that. And he'll still do that if we had a situation where the medication like wasn't working right. And
Mhm.
I was like, what is going on here? Because he will start being like very disrespectful, and then he feels terrible about himself because it's not actually what he wants to have done. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, he's making these choices that are objectively not great, but then he's like feeling terrible about himself, and then that's like digging a hole deeper. And I just like, yeah, it's like, well, we don't need to make things this hard. And so he is, I told him, I said, yeah, when I was your age, I had no idea about ADHD. And he was like, oh, I don't even want to think about that. Like, you didn't have medicine or like know how to do. I was like, no, nothing, none of that.
And our
Just,
parents weren't thinking about our diets. Like they were like, here's your mac and cheese 4 meals a day. And
yeah.
like,
The Velveeta shells and cheese. That was so good.
like your mac and cheese and your your Kool-Aids with all your red dyes and like,
Yeah, we love
yeah, let's
that.
just have at it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Yeah.
and it's so hard now because then so many kids are just, is it ADHD? Is it environmental? Is it, their diet? And, like my one son who's 7, I know he has ADHD because he's homeschooled. We opted to not medicate him, at least not at this point in life. But oh my gosh, like I let him have a Gatorade the other day and he was literally like, he just could not control his body. Like he was slamming his head into the wall. And he's
Yeah,
like,
they say sugar doesn't do that. And then I'm like, but there are so many anecdotal reports that it does.
and he's like,
So,
he's he's a squirrely kid, but like his personality is mellow. So for him to be
yeah.
like aggressively playing like that was not his normal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is interesting, and the environmental factors, and also the fact that like, I mean, ADHD is a thing, and then the like core symptoms of ADHD can also be caused by other stuff. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, I had a friend who was telling me all these like symptoms she'd been having, and I was like, okay, well, this sounds like textbook ADHD, but like this is new and not your whole life. So you should really ask a doctor about it. And it
Yeah.
turned out she had a thyroid issue. And I mean, I mean, my doctor, before she put me on stimulant medication, made sure to do a thyroid check
Hmm.
because the symptoms are, a lot of them are the same.
Yep. I
And
had to do
so
full
it's like,
testing before I got put on a stimulant, but I was shocked on a stimulant. Not only was I able to like focus and get things done, but like I said, I slept for the first time in
mhm.
years and slept like I like got up to an alarm clock. Like, are you kidding me? I've never been able to get up to an alarm clock. But what really surprised me is I had like body aches that my doctors were just kind of telling me like, well, you're getting a little older and you're a little overweight, like that's probably where your body pain's coming from. And
Which
then
that's
like,
the scapegoat for everything. Like,
yeah, like, maybe you're perimenopausal and they test all my hormones and I'm fine. And I'm like, thank you. Now will you listen to me that my body hurts? Like, and I started these meds and like, bam, it was like my body didn't hurt at all anymore.
that's
Like,
crazy.
and so then I went back to my doctor and I was like, wow, these are amazing. Like, my body doesn't hurt anymore. And he's like, well, that's just the fact that it's an amphetamine and it's just making you feel better. And I was like, and I've been on them for almost a year now, and I still get the same benefits every day when I take them.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and you have to wonder, is that like like internalized stress that, that I got Lyme disease when I was in my early 20s. And then shortly thereafter, I did the trifecta of things. I was looking for a job, buying a house, and getting married at like the same time.
Oh, fun.
And I thought that I had not gotten rid of the Lyme because I was like, my knees are like, I'm just having this joint pain and so I went to the like Lyme disease center in Pennsylvania and like they just took five vials of blood and like did all the tests. They were like, no, you're fine. And I'm like, but why are my joints still hurting so bad? And I then after all that stuff was over, I started to feel better. And, an older coworker said to me, she goes, you'd be really surprised the things that stress can do to your body.
Hmm.
And, I think there's only been more research to back that up, that it's like stress is literally toxic to your body.
Hmm.
And, just being on the like wild ADHD roller coaster can be really stressful. Like it's hard. So
I think that
anything to
is
reduce that.
that roller coaster is a constant ride for sure. So, we're about at the end of our time. So, my favorite question for everyone who comes on the podcast is, what does keep growing mean to you?
Ooh, I would think like stay curious. Um,
Ah.
because yeah, we change all the time, life changes all the time. And so what worked for you 2 years ago might suddenly not be it. And just, it's been a lifelong project for me to, not get mired in the what's wrong with me and instead ask questions so that I feel okay, what's really going on here? And approach it like like the engine that your kid is taking apart. And I use a lot of like car analogies in my book. That's you know if something's weird with it, you're not usually like, why is it so bad at being a car? This is so embarrassing. I mean, unless you've gotten a lemon, right? You take it to a mechanic and they can like precisely diagnose the problem and like, oh, actually like the alternator is bad. So that's why it's bad at being a car. And and then you fix that and things are running smoothly again. But why we don't do that in our own lives and continue to like grow our self-knowledge and improve on things and test out solutions and keep trying to do better. That's my goal, is to stay curious about stuff. And
I love that. So, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
sure. Yeah, I've taken a little step back from social media. I am on it. But you can find me at ADHDhomestead.net or jaclynpaul.com. Or since my real name is hard to spell, I write fiction under the name Lena George. And so I also, Lena George author goes to the same place. But yeah, there I have all my stuff and my email list sign up, which I've been leaning into the email list and not so much the social media this year. So
Didn't feel you there. Well,
yeah.
everyone be sure and go check out Jaclyn Paul and her book on ADHD and the ADHD homestead and all her good things that she has. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you. This is fun.
All right. Give me 1 second to figure this out. Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!